Welcome in, listener. You're listening to a segment from the Slumpbuster podcast with Ju-Ju Dre. Find the full episode on Spotify, iTunes, the Google Play Store, or our YouTube channel. Enjoy.
I just can't give you a whole spiel. I don't even know where you're sitting at. I just can't give you a whole spiel.
NBA, week one, started off a lot of big games. Like, the NBA definitely didn't pull any punches when they were coming up with the opening day schedule. That was actually one of our first show headlines we covered, looking back on it, and we finally get to see it on the court. So, Clippers, Lakers, big way to start it off between Kawhi, LeBron, AD. No Paul George because he had a shoulder injury, but still a big game nonetheless. The Clippers take this first round, 112-102. Probably going to be a Western Conference Finals matchup there. Just looking at how these two teams perform on the court. Kawhi put up 30 points on 10 of 19 shooting. LeBron didn't have the best game, only 18 points in over 30 minutes of play. I've seen a lot of pundits criticize him for his lack of aggressive play. Now, you obviously were probably watching this game very intently as an avid Lakers fan. So tell me, what are some kind of your thoughts? Because one of the big things I'm hearing is LeBron tried too hard to get Anthony Davis involved rather than just taking control of the game like he normally would.
Yeah, so I think it's very important to not overreact to game one, right, of 82. So it's a long season. There's plenty of play, to be had. But that being said, I think there were some really good insights that you could take away from this. And so first thing is the Clippers, we knew they were going to be good, but they are really freaking good. And we'll talk more about their other game that they played this week, but the Clippers are just really freaking good. And Pat Beverly is a huge part of that, right? So he has just an infectious energy about him, and he's not afraid to go after people. He wasn't afraid to go after LeBron James even, right? Or Anthony Davis. And I think that just infects the whole team. They're also incredibly well coached. You could tell that Doc Rivers, a lot of times in this matchup, he just out-coached Frank Vogel. And so he made all the right adjustments. And I had even heard that there was times where he specifically planned when Danny Green would be out to be able to maximize Kawhi Leonard. I didn't make this analysis or analyze it that deep just because I don't have the basketball background. But I want to say Pete Zayas and Anthony Irwin, right, of Locked On Lakers, they were able to see that and saw that Doc Rivers was a genius and knew exactly how to maximize, I guess, sort of the lethality of Kawhi Leonard being on the court, right, is when Danny Green was out and nobody could stop him. As far as some other insights, right, going back to the whole LeBron thing, I think part of it is just learning how to play with a new team. So people forget that this Lakers squad is almost entirely new and different from what it was last year, right? And so the only real holdover were Alex Caruso, and then you also had Kyle Kuzma, but Kyle Kuzma didn't even play, right? So that's one piece that the Lakers didn't have in that first game. And so a lot of it was LeBron trying to distribute, get everybody involved, especially Anthony Davis. But part of it was they just don't really know how to play together yet.
That is definitely an interesting insight. Definitely a lot to pick apart, like in that statement you had there. So in particular, I did find it interesting you talked about Frank Vogel's coaching, because we mentioned those first 20 games are going to be pivotal for him, because he has Jason Kidd just literally lurking in the background right behind him as LeBron's preferred coach. We all know it. There's no hiding it. LeBron just definitely wants a guy that's been in the NBA before, and he respects Jason Kidd, even despite Jason Kidd's lack of success as an NBA head coach. Now, as far as where this team is going to go moving forward, Dre, come on. We have to overreact to one game in the NBA. It is now our job to overreact week to week. Honestly, mad respect to the pundits to have to do this each and every day, because it is so hard not to overreact when we watch this, even doing this on a weekly basis. I got to say that's for sure one of the things. But I think, too, that's interesting when we talk about NFL. We'll talk about some of overreactions we've had week to week with that one. But, like, watching these two games here for the Clippers, they just seem so suffocating. This is definitely their conference to win. And if they don't win the NBA title this year, I'm going to be surprised. Because, again, they did all this without Paul George. Without George on the court. And the second he steps into it, not only is he going to provide suffocating defense just to make this like more of an anaconda vice, on the rest of the team's offensive production. But he is such a dynamic scorer himself by his own right. His ability to hit from range, his ability to drive the paint. He just adds a whole new dimension to this team, and they're scary. They're going to be a very tough team to knock out, especially in a 7-game series nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we talk about the Lakers, LeBron, stop making dumb comments because I'm tired of talking about this. So his whole comment of this is not a rivalry. Dude, did you not pay attention to the fact that basically 2 guys said they didn't want to play with you in LA? They want to play against you. They came into your building and now are the more dominant franchise. Yeah, it's a rivalry, LeBron. And this is just honestly a bigger problem I have with the NBA, that everyone's such buddy-buddy nowadays, now that everyone's making money. I like a good rivalry. I actually like what Pat Beverly did to an extent with the Warriors. We'll analyze the comment here in a minute when we talk about that game, but I just like that dog mentality, that like getting up in your opponent's face, not this like buddy-buddy, no one cares, kind of like what LeBron's brought to the league. That's just a personal feeling I have. I don't know how you feel about that.
You hit the nail right on the head, right? Is you have 2 guys, and one of them even played you, right? Because if Kawhi had told the Lakers straight up, hey, I'm not coming, right? Like, you guys can go ahead and test out the rest of your free agency, the Lakers potentially could have built a better squad. I think this is almost as good as it gets, especially given the situation, right? But Kawhi, and I've heard people say this, that it was his intention to purposely screw over the Lakers, right? And make them hold out so they couldn't get any other free agents. Like a JJ Redick would have looked real nice on this team right now. There's a few other point guards that possibly were available that would be better than, and Quinn Cook performed pretty well. Alex Caruso, not as good as we had hoped right now, right? And he'll come in. I don't think he even played in the first game. But, like, they could have filled out this roster a lot better. So you had Kawhi that held you guys up, made you guys suffer, right? And then Paul George, who was supposed to be a Laker, and then he said, no, I'm out, just to play one more year in OKC and then bounce back to LA. Like, I would have appreciated it if LeBron had said something like, yeah, they won the battle, but the war's not over. Something like that. Not, it's not a rivalry.
It brings it up. Is LeBron just in this at this point? Like, what does he want to get out of his time in LA? Does he legitimately want to win a title anymore? Or is he just playing till LeBronnie's in the NBA? Because he's not seeming like a competitor. And I think that's probably when people compare him to Michael Jordan in the long run. That's going to be held against him, that he's not competitive. He's friends with all these guys. He's not avidly trying to beat them.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. And that's one of the other observations I had with this Lakers team as a whole, is a lot of times they just got out hustled. There was, I think Pat Beverly, I want to say the stat was he had 8 rebounds, and then Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard had JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard had 10 rebounds combined or something like that. And so when you have a little point guard that's out hustling you to get those rebounds, right, and your big centers are just letting the ball go by. And there were some times where I saw on a missed free throw, we had everybody box everybody out, and there was literally only one Clipper player in the vicinity, and they were still able to get the rebound after everybody else was already transitioning back on defense. And the Lakers just sort of watched the ball bounce back to the Clippers. So then, of course, they came back and scored rather than transitioning defense. And so I do question, and I love LeBron James, right, being on the Lakers. I think he still is one of the best players in the world, not what he was, but I do question how much passion does LeBron really have to win? And just this team in general, it's a very good team, but they didn't always look like they wanted to win when I was watching this game.
Yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, but I'm sure they'll bounce back. Danny Green, like, he definitely was your guys' most dynamic offensive player on the court the other night.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, I don't know if you could really count on that, because as efficient as he was in game 1, he's proven to be not as efficient over the long course of a season. He had some struggles in even the Raptors championship run last year too, like where there was games where he was just almost non-existent. I think they still have some work to do with filling out this roster. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when the deadline comes about, whether they're going to make some more moves to add depth to this team. But I mean, the Clippers, they had a second game this week too, and at a point where we may be shifting dynasties in the NBA, because if the Clippers can maintain what they have right now, they're going to be a good team for years to come. And we're coming off of the Golden State Warriors dynasty, and they just destroyed that, wrecked shit in the Warriors' new building the other day. Because look at this game score, 141 to 122. Was anyone playing defense in that game? Could Steph Curry or anyone just like stop a guy? No, clearly it was not. The Clippers bench in that game scored 60. And Steph, it's going to be a rough year that we're talking about this. Who's going to be one of those teams that gets phased out of this year's Western Conference playoffs? Because there's a lot of teams competing and not everyone can make it. Could the Warriors really miss the playoffs? It's at least a possibility.
Yeah, and we sort of touched on it, right? Is we had said that Steph Curry and D'Lo are going to be fun to watch, and it's going to be exciting on offense, but it's going to be awful on defense. And we sort of knew this was going to happen. And I'm going to say that I'm not surprised, right, that they will give up 140 points in a game. It won't be every night, right? Like, not every team is as dynamic as the Clippers are right now, especially when they get Paul George back. They're going to be one of the best, both offensive and defensive teams. I mean, that's what's going to happen when you have two of the best two-way players, but it does not look too good for the Golden State Warriors, especially because everybody else has gotten so much better, right? So in the past, the Warriors, they've been able to win, 3 out of the 4 games that they'll play against the Lakers or whatever. That's probably not going to happen this year. The Spurs are always going to be tough, right? And you can see that the Warriors are also struggling with these sort of long and tall teams that are still pretty skilled. And so how are they going to handle the 76ers, right? The 76ers are a really big team. How are they going to handle, the Giannis's, right? And teams like that. So I do have some serious concern over the Golden State Warriors. I, for now, still think it's a little bit too early to overreact. I think that they are going to still make the playoffs, but they might even drop a little bit further than I had them last week.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I think one of the bigger things that a lot of people noticed is the lackluster debut of the Chase Center. So I saw images of a ton of fans leaving the game early, which is always a big no-no in my mind when it comes to attending sports games. If you recall, this this reminds me of the famous moment where the Miami Heat fans started leaving during the NBA Finals, and then the LeBron-led Heat came on a legendary run to take back that game, but fans couldn't get back in the stadium. That's the risk you run when you leave these games. You never know. But also, it just is a terrible look for your fans and shows that there's just a lot of, as far as if you're the Warriors and you're trying to rub off the stink of a bunch of bandwagon fans in the last few years, that's not a great way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not what you want on like first few games of opening your new stadium, right? You want it to have good energy. You want the fans to stay the whole time, even in a loss, right? But I mean, I understand why the fans were leaving. Like, I would be upset if my team performed like that. I know the Lakers got beat by 10, but I thought it was actually a closer game than it looks on paper. But the Warriors were just getting beat up. And so when you have losses like that too, it means that more people might not come back to the next Warriors game.
Well, I've seen some Warriors ticket prices. That might be a deterrent in itself. I did mention Pat Beverly's comment earlier. So he went up to a Warriors fan, or Warrior staffers, and dropped this little nugget on them. Y'all a little different without KD, I see. Y'all cheated long enough. Y'all had a good run. Back to reality. I just found it such a kind of stupid comment in a way, though. So, like, I like the mentality, the dog mentality of it. But the comment itself is so dumb because Pat Beverly, you were literally out there recruiting KD this offseason. Do you not remember that?
Yeah, and the fact that they just had 2, of the best players in the NBA have to join them this season, and all of a sudden, they can win the ring, which, like, that's just how the NBA is nowadays. But, like, it's not the best look when you're telling people that they're cheaters, and then, you had to go and get Kawhi Leonard and Paul George to join your team, this year. Now, granted, I don't think that Pat Bev was necessarily the one, like, out recruiting them, but it's a lot easier to talk big when you have those two guys on your team.
Okay, so focusing on the Warriors side here, they had some more comments besides their lackluster debut with the Chase Center and the loss itself. So Michael Jordan decided to put his 2 cents into Steph Curry's legacy this week, and he put it out there. Steph isn't a Hall of Famer. Steph is a great player, but not a Hall of Famer. How do you feel like Jordan's really justified saying that? We're talking about a 3-time champion here, a back-to-back MVP, a unanimous MVP at that, and he's third on the all-time three-point shooters list, only behind Ray Allen, Reggie Miller, and he's probably going to pass Reggie Miller this year. Want to dissect Steph's legacy and tell us why Michael Jordan, good player, terrible GM, even worse pundit?
And I just don't understand why Michael Jordan was saying this. I don't know how you could deny that Steph Curry, even if all of a sudden his career goes off the rails this year, right? Like his team is not as good as it has been in the past, right? And what if they never win another championship? That's like a very realistic thing that could happen. But even if that were to happen, I think he would still be a Hall of Famer. Like you said, he's gonna probably break all the records as far as it comes to made 3-point shooting. His career percentage is one of the best ever for 3-point shooting. And the MVPs, so I just don't see how Jordan is really justified in saying this. I don't know if he's like maybe trying to start like a WWE type like beef, right? And get people excited about this. I don't know what's going on here, but I don't see the grounds he has to stand on.
Well, clearly, he's not known for being a great talent evaluator. Look at the Charlotte Bobcats, Hornets, whatever the hell they want to call themselves the last 20 years under his management. They have just been one of the most garbage franchises. They went and lost their franchise player in Kemba Walker this offseason, and he's picking fights with modern NBA players besides LeBron James. So I don't know what Jordan's thinking of with this one here. I don't know. I think that here, the Charlotte Hornets, you have a serious issue with Michael Jordan's leadership of this franchise right now.
Yeah, but it's also hard to tell Michael Jordan, right, the best, arguably the best player ever, that, hey, bro, you got to go sell the franchise.
Question.
Yeah.
Worst executive, Magic Johnson or Michael Jordan?
Oh, Magic Johnson by far. Like, it's not even close. Michael Jordan, I would take in a heartbeat. If Michael Jordan had offered to take the job over Magic Johnson, I would have said take Michael Jordan. Like, Magic Johnson was so bad.
I mean, could you argue, though, Magic left, helped the team? Well, Michael Jordan is going to choose to stick with this team for another 20 years just in the lottery hell that is the Charlotte franchise.
Yeah. No,
doing more trouble sticking it out.
Yeah. Let's just say I think both franchises, or no matter who you had out of those two, you're probably better off firing whoever it is that's your GM out of those two.
Yeah. Okay. So some more NBA headlines before we move off of this. So Kyrie Irving, 50-point game. God, you better come through tonight, Kemba, because God bless. So 50 points from Kyrie Irving against the T-Wolves. He's the first player in NBA history to put up 50 with a new team. It's frustrating to watch him come out and ball like this, but at the same time, I don't think it's sustainable long-term. I do think that in the playoffs, he's going to falter kind of like what he did last year with Boston. At times, he turned in Russell Westbrook last year. I don't know. I don't see it continuing, but hey, that's just one notable stat from it. Kemba, I mean, he was going against a big, long 76ers team, so I don't really know what to really make of that in his debut. Hopefully he bounces back. They're playing the Raptors tonight, probably a more favorable matchup from point guard position.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I think you'll see a better version of Kemba. I think this was a tough matchup for him. Also, it's always hard, right, integrating into a new team, though I do think that he fits Steven's system better, right? So I think eventually you'll start to see the gains from that with Kemba. And now it might just be a little bit early, but it'll change. As far as Kyrie Irving, though, like we've always known that he's this type of player and could put up 50 points. But the thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, but their team still lost, right? In overtime or whatever it was, or double overtime.
I thought he hit the game winner against the Wolves.
Did he hit the game winner?
No. You know what? I remember correctly. He did almost have a highlight win there, a highlight game winner, but it didn't drop. They actually lost to the T-Wolves 127-126. So we talked about it with like Devin Booker with his 50-plus point games that ended up losses. How much do you really put into these 50-point games when the final result is you taking that L against like a heartless T-Wolves squad led by Wiggins and Cat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly, right? And we know that Kyrie is a good player and we know he'll get your points, but if it's not resulting in wins, right, does it really matter? I mean, outside of maybe jersey sales for your team and you bring in some added revenue, right? Like you finally have a superstar on your team, you're filling seats, but you know, it might not always result in wins. And granted, a game that's that close is almost a coin flip, right? Like the shot very well could have gone in and he could have won and my point might be moot. But yeah, I just worry about Kyrie Irving's impact on actually winning the game. And you sort of made this point when we were talking about the season previews, right? Is that Kyrie, we've seen him on a team on his own, and they were not very good with the Cavs, right?
That's true. So, I mean, but there'll still probably be a playoff team in the East. I mean, at the end of the day, they don't have KD, but we'll see what happens. Again, I'm hearing Carmelo's name pop up a little bit more. Moving off of the Nets and Kyrie, another, I invoked his name just a second ago, but Russell Westbrook made his debut with the Rockets. The Rockets blew a 16-point halftime lead to the Bucks. Now, I'm not going to blame you for losing to Giannis, but whenever you have the advantage in this game, it definitely does hurt a little bit more for this new Rockets team as they're still trying to find their way. There's a lot of drama around this team. They're a fireball. I told you, I don't like them. I could see this being a first-round exit for them. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I used to like Russell Westbrook in a way, but I think I'm just had Russell Westbrook overload over the last few years between the silly outfits, the triple-doubles, which is the most overrated stat. But shout out to you, Giannis, for your triple-double, 30 points, 13 rebounds, 11 assists, because that actually resulted in a win.
Yeah, I mean, that's just hard personality to deal with, and something you didn't even mention, but Russell and Harden were already getting into it, and this was barely the first game, right? So how long can they last through the season without, literally ripping each other's heads off?
I mean, this franchise tried to tell us everything was okay with Carmelo, like up until the point they just randomly cut him in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really buy into this Rockets organization right now. I think they're very quick to move off players. I did find it interesting. So Russ was third on the team in three-point attempts. He knocked down a couple, 3 for 7, not the worst on the team. That belongs to you, James Harden, 1 for 8. Disappointing there. But hey, James Harden not showing up in a big game, who would have thunk it?
Yeah. So here's what I think. I still think that this team's going to do very well in the regular season. And so I'm not going to disagree with you. I could see this very well being a first-round exit team. I still see some sparks. The fact that they were able to lead by 16 at halftime against the Bucks shows me that there's some sign of life. But you're right. I think that some of that relationship might start to deteriorate. And I don't know if they'll get it all together by playoff time and be able to pull out a world championship.
I just really do not envy D'Antoni in this one, trying to figure out putting two ball-dominant guards together and making it work. It doesn't seem like a match made in heaven by any means, even when they made this trade. Because when you added Chris Paul was definitely more of a distributor and definitely added more to the offense and was pretty dynamic defensively even in his later years. So to move from him to Russ is just not like a perfect transition by any means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, that does it for NBA Week 1. I guess my final thing on this one is LeBron dropping 50 tonight against the Jazz to make up.
No, I don't think so. I think it's going to be a really competitive game, actually. I'm glad that it's at home, though. I will say that. I think that gives the Lakers a slight edge. And then, honestly, our first 20 games for the Lakers are really easy. I could see them losing maybe only 4 games in that stretch. And if so, Frank Vogel, congratulations, you'll keep your job. If he loses more than that, though, that might be rough, right? And from just a sort of motivation standpoint, is these are some games that I think the Lakers need to win. And tonight being a big one, if they can win it, I think they'll be okay for the next 20 games or so.